Hello friends, I'm here today to share with you all of the books that I read in the months of June and July. June wasn't a very high number of books for me. I only read 9, but then July really picked up for me, so I was able to read 17. So I'm gonna do kind of quick, shorter reviews just to be able to get through these. Starting off the month, I listened to Twisted by Emily McIntyre. This is in her Twisted Fairy Tales series. Gave this one 4 stars. After that, I read Royal Reckoning by Emily Silver. This one is a contemporary royal romance where the princess wants to kind of run away from her life, and she ends up meeting a tattoo artist. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next was Caught Up in a Cowboy by Jenny Martz. I picked this one up at Readers Take Denver. This is a professional hockey player who is injured, and so his coach sends him home to kind of recuperate. His family owns a ranch, and so he is trying to let them know that he's okay enough to work on the ranch, and it's a second chance with his high school sweetheart. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next, I read all 3 books in this bind up from the Foolproof Love series by Katie Robert. These are all cowboy romances as well. I honestly can't remember which of the stories was which for this. Book 1 is Foolproof Love. I gave it 3 stars. Book 2 is Fool Me Once. I gave it 3 stars. And then book 3 is A Fool for You, and I gave it 4 stars. But like I said, I do not remember being able to, I can't differentiate out which book was which. Next, I read Up All Night with a Good Duke by Amy Rose Bennett. I wanted to call her Amy Lynn Bennett for some reason. But yeah, this is, I think, book 1 in this Byronic book club series. I ended up giving it 4 stars. So this is about a school teacher who is also a romance author by night. And then the Duke who needs a wife to make the society see that he didn't kill his first wife. It was a whole thing. But yeah, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next, I read The Rebel by Sophie Lark. This is in her Kingmaker series. This one is Zoe and Miles, I think his name was. The Kingmaker series is kind of a college boarding school for mafia families. Zoe is her family has her set into an arranged marriage with a very bad guy who she does not want to marry. And then when she meets Miles, they have a connection. And this book is them trying to figure out how to go about getting her out of her engagement so that they can be together. And I gave it 4 stars. And then finally, to wrap up the month of June, I read Verity and the Forbidden Suitor by J.J. McAvoy. This is book 2 to Aphrodite and the Duke, which was one of my favorite historicals of last year. So this one is about Verity and Theodore. Theodore is a doctor, and so it's kind of a class difference romance, and that's basically why he's forbidden, is because she doesn't think that people will accept him as her husband. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Okay, so to start off the month of August, I finished out the Twisted series by Anna Huang, and I read Twisted Lies. This one is Christian and Stella. They have been teased a lot, mostly in book 3. I feel like there was a little sprinkling of them in books 1 and 2, but mostly in book 3 they were teased a lot. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I just felt like the majority of their story that I would have been interested in took place before this starts, so I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the build-up between those two. Next, I read On the Hustle by Adriana Herrera. This one is Alba and Theo. Alba is Theo's assistant in New York City, but she decides to quit her job and move to Dallas, where her best friend has moved in book 1. And unbeknownst to her, Theo follows her because he has always wanted her to find a different job so that he could pursue a relationship with her. But he's always kind of been mean to kind of put that wall between them, that she was the employee and he was the boss, and he didn't want to overstep that. So he was always mean to her, and so she ends up quitting and moving to Dallas right away. So he has no other choice but to follow her. I gave this one 4 stars. Next up was Crimson River by Devney Perry. This one was way more romantic suspense than I expected it to be. This one is Lila and Vance. Lila is kind of taking a break from all of her responsibilities, and she's out on a hike, and she ends up seeing this hunter like cleaning blood off of himself in the river, Crimson River. Well, then Vance arrives in town because he is actually chasing the fugitive that he thinks Lila saw, and so it's a bunch of them working together to try to figure out if the person she saw is still out there. It's, like I said, way more romantic suspense I think than any of the other books have been, and I gave this one 4 stars. So next, I was able to get an early ebook copy of In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros. No surprise to anyone, I gave this a 5 stars. This is another super emotional military romance from Rebecca Yarros. This one is also, it's told in a dual timeline, but it's the present day for this couple, and then flashing back to how they met, and then going throughout their like whole timeline. Like I said, it's another super emotional one. I did have to warn somebody. I saw Shelby Taggart ask for spoilers on her Instagram, so I did have to tell her there is a lot of PTSD issues. There is a lot of, I think if you knew somebody who had gone through the situation in this book or something similar within the military, I would be hesitant to tell you to pick it up, because while I do think Rebecca Yarros handles it with grace, like I was laying in bed at like probably midnight, maybe even after, just bawling my eyes out. But 5 stars. I love Rebecca Yarros' writing. It always hits me in the feels. And so after that, I read Always Enough by Kelly Elliott. I don't remember what this series is called. This is book 2 in her Meet Me in Montana series. This one is about Kaylee and Ty. Kaylee's friend is the one in book 1 that moved to Montana. So she's been living in Atlanta without her best friend and decides that she is finally going to take that plunge and move as well. But when she gets there, she butts heads with Ty a little bit. They're both like super strong-willed, super big personality. But he is going through, he used to be a professional bull rider, but has been injured. And so he's going through a lot, mentally to get himself back on track, so that there's a bit of a drug addiction thing that happened before the book starts. It's not really heavily in the book, but he does talk about always having that draw to the addiction. So it's them kind of fighting for each other so that they can be together. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. After that, I read Love on the Lake by Helena Hunting. This is book 2 in her something lake series. I'm terrible with names. Lakeside series. So this one is Tegan and Aaron. Tegan goes to visit her brother who moved to the lake in book 1, and she ends up running into Aaron while he is fixing up the above garage apartment thing that she's going to be staying in. And they get off on a bit of a rough start. I wouldn't necessarily call it enemies. It's more of 2 people fighting their attraction for each other. There is also a lot of addiction issues in this one as well. But this one is with Tegan. She has a bit of a problem saying no to people, and then she uses the substances to get her through having all these commitments. I also gave this one 4 stars. Next up was Be With Me by Samantha Young. I'm so sorry I'm going to butcher these names. This one is Aaron and Aradine. I think that's how the audiobook pronounced it. Aradine has been with the Adair family working as a fitness instructor because she is running away from some sketchy people who are in her past. And she has been friends with Aaron since she became like tied to the family. But he doesn't actually know what she's running from. As they start to step up their friendship, the sketchy people from Aradine's past kind of start to show up, and so Aaron is getting filled in on all of that stuff. I also gave this one 4 stars. I wish it had focused a little less on the stuff from her past and a little more on them moving from friends to in a relationship, just because I don't really love a friends to lovers, and so I kind of wish that there had been more explained there. Then I reread Our Story by Kat Singleton. I absolutely love this one. I gave it 5 stars. This one is Cade and Marigold. They had kind of a secret thing. Cade is her best friend's older brother, so they kind of had a secret thing, and then she ended up leaving town and fulfilling her dreams of becoming a published author. Well, now she's back for Cade and her friend's mother's funeral, and so she wants to hang around town to help her friend, to help with the grieving process, because she also lost her mother, but at a much younger age. So a lot of the feelings between these two are brought back up. Like I said, I gave this 5 stars. It made me so happy, and then it broke my heart, and then it made me so happy again, and it's a whole roller coaster of emotions that honestly, as the first book I read from Kat Singleton since Black Ties and White Lies, I didn't really expect, but I think she can write this steam really well. I think she can also write the sweet very well. So next I read The Brick Wall and the Bombshell by Jivy Kate. This is book 4 in their New Orleans Reveler series. This is a baseball romance between a professional baseball player and the journalist who like covers the games. She has to, well, she doesn't have to, but she becomes his roommate, and then it starts a with benefits situation. I ended up giving this one 4 stars just simply for that fact. I really liked how protective they were of each other, but I don't see the point of calling a relationship a with benefits. When you spend all your time together, you're just in a relationship. Next, probably my most disappointing read. I was gonna say the whole year, but maybe not the whole year, but definitely for the like summer months. I read Grimm and Barrett by Juliet Cross, and I am giving this one 3 stars. So this one is Clara and Henry, who I have adored every time they've shown up in this whole series. I have adored them together. I've adored them separately. But this is more of a wrap up to the whole series as opposed to Clara and Henry's love story. I felt like they were cheated a little bit out of a great romance book. But yeah, I honestly struggled with this one. I knew Juliet Cross needed to wrap up the storyline, but I really wanted Clara and Henry to have like a really, really good romance, and I just didn't feel like they did. So I gave this 3 stars. Next was an attempt for a series reading vlog that I had to stop. I was not really enjoying the books, and so I did not want to put myself into a slump. Like I said, I was on track for doing way better numbers wise for the month of July, so I just had to pause. I did read, nope, this one's book 1. Book 1, Founded on Goodbye by Kat Singleton. It's book 1 in the mixtape series. It's a rock star romance. The girl is hired to break his heart because he writes bitter songs when he's heartbroken. I gave this one 4 stars. Book 2 is Founded on Temptation. This is his bodyguard with the friend of the girl who broke his heart in book 1. And I gave this one 3 stars because their love story was just so tied up into the events of book 1, and I didn't really enjoy that. I think I would have preferred for it to be completely separate. So that's as far as I got in the series. I had to pause on book 3. I was getting that same vibe of them being so tied up, the couple in that book being so tied up into the couple from book 1, and so I put a pause on it. Next, I read The Temporary Wife by Katharine Amara. This is book 2 in her Windsor series. I've only read these books 1 and 2, and I absolutely love this series. It is so dramatic. The heroes just really, like, they love these women, even like when they don't realize that they love them so passionately. But yeah, so this one is Luca and Valentina. Per the arrangement with the grandmother, Luca is set to marry this woman that he cannot stand. So he asks Valentina, who has been his assistant for years, who kind of knows how he is and knows his personality, to be his wife until the contract is fulfilled and he can get the money from the grandma. But little do they know how compatible the two of them really are. And it's so good. It's so dramatic, just like book 1 is. But I loved it. After that, I read An Island Princess Starts a Scandal by Adriana Herrera. This one is a sapphic romance between Manuela and Cora. Manuela is in Paris, kind of a pre-wedding trip. She's set to marry this man of her parents' choosing, but is sent to Paris beforehand, where she ends up meeting Cora, who is a duchess. Yes, she's a duchess, and she asks Cora to kind of show her the sapphic world of Paris, which was really interesting to hear about. And there's, I think the little author's note in the back was like all of the places that were really like based on real places. But that was really cool, and as somebody who enjoys history, this was a nice little addition to it, something that's not normally talked about. But yeah, I thought this was a really great romance. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Probably the shock of the month for me was The King's Spinster Bride by Ruby Dixon. This is a fantasy romance, which I very rarely dip into, honestly. And then it was a novella, which I usually do not enjoy because I wish that there was more. And I do wish that there was more of this one, but not in a negative way like I feel like it is sometimes. I forget their names, but this one, she's a princess, and then her kingdom is overtaken, and so she is sent to this nunnery to live in. And then I forget how many years it was later, the prince, after his dad dies, the king that overtook her kingdom, after his dad dies, the prince goes to get her and says that they are going to get married. So yes, I really love this one. It was super good. It's an age gap where the woman is older, and that's one of the things, is like she doesn't know why this king would want her when she's older and probably can't give him an heir. But yeah, I thought it was super good. After that, I read The Rebel King by Gina Maxwell. This is book 2 in the Deviant Kings series. This one is about Tiernan and Fiona. Tiernan, his brother at the end of book 1, renounced the throne, and so Tiernan is now the heir to the Fae Kingdom of Las Vegas. So he feels like he cannot keep going with his with this little fling that he's had with Fiona. And so it's them kind of really being drawn to each other, but not knowing how to get out of the situation. Spoiler alert, he's king, so he can get the situation fixed. But yeah, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. They were kind of frustrating with that they didn't realize if he was king, he could do what he wanted. So yeah, 4 stars. And finally, I wanted to go a bit into a dark romance, so I picked up Until I Get You by Claire Contreras. This was a ride, y'all. This one is Lila and Lachlan. They meet in college. He becomes super obsessed with her, but there is somebody in her past who is really trying to do her harm, who is doing her harm. There's a lot of sexual assault talk in here. Fair trigger warning for that. So the person who is sexually assaulting her will not let anybody get close to her. Whenever she gets close to somebody, they end up dead or injured. And so that's what happens to Lachlan the night before the draft, or the night before this championship game, something like that. He's a hockey player. He is injured so badly that the team can't even play for the championship because they're so worried about him. And so Lila decides that she is going to save him and she's going to run off. Well, it is 3 years later now. He has retired from hockey to start working for his dad's kind of like a cybersecurity company. And he has decided that he is going to find Lila and make her pay for leaving him. But even when he finds her, he is still really worried about why she ran away, what that process was for her. So they're still really drawn to each other. It was really good. I did give it 4 stars. it was a lot. It was a lot, and I don't know that it needed to be a lot, if that makes sense. So yeah, those are the books that I read in the month of June and July. Have you read any of these? Let me know what you thought about them down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye!